Night. A single spark. Then a glow in the dark. You probably think smoking is a modern habit, a product of factories, warning labels, medical reports, addiction clinics. But the chemistry behind that habit is far older than the cigarette. The moment that ember begins to burn between your fingers, something far older wakes up. A plant molecule enters your body and finds receptors that evolved long before tobacco, cities, or even modern humans existed. And to understand why humans kept returning to it, we have to erase everything we think we know. No hospitals, no chemistry, no cigarettes. Just fire, stone, cold, and people trying to survive one more night. Because the real question isn't simply when humans discovered tobacco. It's much stranger than that. When did we first choose to breathe danger into our own lungs? Why would any intelligent animal willingly inhale smoke, something every instinct says to avoid? The answer isn't sitting only inside a laboratory. It's buried inside a forgotten campfire. To imagine how that relationship might have begun, let's go back beyond recorded history, to an ordinary night beside a fire. A bitter wind. Open grasslands stretching to the horizon. The sun disappeared hours ago. A lone hunter crouches beside a dying fire. His hands are numb. His stomach is empty. Every sound in the darkness could mean another predator. He reaches for whatever will burn. Twigs, leaves, dry weeds growing beside the stones. Into the flames they go. The fire flares. Then, a thick ribbon of smoke rolls straight toward his face. He coughs hard. His eyes sting. Every instinct tells him to move away. This isn't ordinary wood smoke. It's sharper, bitter, almost chemical. The smell of a plant fighting for its life. He turns his head, takes a breath. Perhaps he feels dizzy, perhaps unusually alert, perhaps sick enough to pull away. We cannot know. We do not know who first discovered tobacco, whether the discovery happened beside a fire or whether the earliest users smoked it at all. That exact scene is a reconstruction. But the human relationship with tobacco is genuinely ancient. At a hunter-gatherer campsite in what is now Utah, archaeologists found tobacco seeds inside a hearth dated to roughly 12,300 years ago, thousands of years before tobacco was domesticated. The discovery does not prove that people were smoking it. The plant may have been chewed, processed, carried, or burned for another purpose. But it tells us something important. Humans were interacting with tobacco far earlier than historians once assumed. Humans mastered fire far earlier than that, hundreds of thousands of years earlier. For all that time, campfires were never clean. Branches carried leaves, roots, seeds, wild herbs, sometimes poisonous, sometimes medicinal, sometimes something in between. Every night was a chemistry experiment nobody understood. Generation after generation, fire after fire. Eventually, someone was bound to burn a plant that did far more than make heat. Imagine enough evenings, enough accidents, enough curious people willing to taste, chew, burn, or inhale an unfamiliar plant. All it takes is one memorable experience, one unexpected effect, one person who repeats it. Others notice, others imitate, and slowly, an accident becomes a habit. Not because one person suddenly invented smoking, but because human cultures are built through trial, memory, and imitation. A plant produces an effect. Someone remembers it. Someone else copies it. The practice survives long enough to acquire a meaning. Which raises an uncomfortable question. Smoke hurts. It burns your throat, makes you cough, makes your eyes water. Normally, that's the end of the story. Animals don't repeat experiences that feel dangerous. Taste something unbearably bitter? Avoid it. Touch a hot surface? Never do it again. Your nervous system is built for exactly that. So why would humans return to tobacco despite its unpleasant effects? Why did discomfort become curiosity? Why did pain become attraction? An animal, refined by millions of years of evolution, shouldn't crave something that immediately feels harmful. Unless something even more important was happening beneath the surface. The plant's poison was interacting with the nervous system in a way the plant never evolved to produce. One possibility is that powerful plants were sometimes interpreted as medicine. Ancient people lived with parasites, infections, pain, and illnesses they could not explain. Many plant compounds really can affect insects, worms, bacteria, or the human nervous system. Nicotine itself attacks receptors in the nervous systems of many insects, which is why tobacco produces it in the first place. That has inspired an intriguing hypothesis. Perhaps some early users associated tobacco's intense physical effects with cleansing, protection, or healing. But this is where the evidence stops. We do not have proof that prehistoric people began using tobacco to eliminate intestinal parasites. And we should not imagine that inhaling tobacco smoke was a safe or reliable medicine. It was still a toxic gamble, one whose effects could easily be mistaken for treatment. Now think about the plant itself. It never evolved to help humans, not even remotely. Plants can't run, they can't bite, they can't hide. So over millions of years, they developed another strategy: chemistry. Every toxic compound inside a plant exists for one simple reason: defense. Think of them as microscopic weapons factories. Instead of claws, they build molecules. Instead of teeth, they manufacture poison. One of those molecules is nicotine. Today, most people associate nicotine with cigarettes. But long before cigarettes existed, nicotine had another job: disrupting the nervous systems of insects and other small herbivores that tried to feed on the plant. The plant wasn't trying to create addiction. It was trying to survive. It never cared whether humans existed. It was fighting an entirely different war. But biology has a habit of recycling old tools. When nicotine enters the human body, it does not become a precise weapon that targets only parasites or disease. It interacts with the human nervous system too. That interaction is the real reason tobacco became so memorable. Tobacco did not have to improve human survival in order to spread. It only had to create an experience powerful enough to be noticed, remembered, repeated, and eventually shared. The most important transformation was happening inside the brain. Another night. The temperature keeps falling. Snow begins to drift across the plain. Somewhere in the darkness, wolves. Close enough to hear. Closer than he'd like. The hunter pulls himself beneath a rocky ledge. He hasn't eaten properly in days. His fingers barely respond. Sleep isn't an option. Fear keeps him awake. So does the cold. He reaches for the same dry plants, the same fire, the same smoke. One slow breath, then another. And inside his nervous system, the plant's chemical disguise begins to work. Nicotine is an extraordinary molecule, not because it's powerful, because it's convincing. Inside your brain is a chemical messenger called acetylcholine. Think of it as one of the nervous system's oldest messengers, a tiny courier carrying instructions from one neuron to the next. Every message needs a receiver, like a key fitting into a lock. Nicotine was never meant to fit that lock, but evolution sometimes produces strange coincidences. Its shape is close enough to fool the brain, like a counterfeit key that just happens to open the front door. The moment nicotine reaches the brain, it slips into receptors built for acetylcholine. The receptors don't know the difference. They open anyway. The brain has been deceived, and it responds exactly as if something important has just happened. Signals race across the nervous system. Dopamine begins to rise, not because you've earned a reward, because your brain believes something valuable has occurred. That's one of dopamine's biggest misconceptions. It isn't simply the pleasure chemical, part of a broader learning system that helps the brain assign importance, anticipate rewards, and remember which actions should be repeated. Depending on the dose and the person, the first experience might bring alertness, nausea, dizziness, a racing heart, or a strange combination of discomfort and stimulation. But one effect matters above all. The brain marks the experience as significant. This plant did something. Remember it. That does not prove nicotine made ancient hunters better at surviving, but it helps explain why tobacco could spread without offering any clear long-term benefit. A fast, noticeable effect is enough to generate curiosity. A repeatable effect is enough to become a habit. And a habit shared by a community can eventually become a tradition. Fast forward to today. The wolves are gone. Winter rarely decides whether you'll wake up tomorrow. Parasites no longer define most people's lives. But your brain? It hasn't received the update. The circuitry is almost identical. The circuitry is built from the same ancient systems, the same dopamine pathways, the same ancient survival program. Only the threats have changed. Now the predator is a deadline, a mortgage, a lonely apartment after midnight, an unanswered message, a future you can't control. Your brain reacts as though survival itself is at stake. So when nicotine appears, it reaches for the same lock. For someone who already uses nicotine regularly, another dose can briefly restore attention and reduce the irritability created by withdrawal. That relief feels real, but part of the problem being relieved was produced by the previous dose wearing off. The environment changed. The brain didn't change nearly as quickly, and that's how an ancient plant chemical quietly became a modern trap. But the story still isn't over, because eventually, the plant stopped being merely an individual experience. The fire burns a little brighter now, not because it's larger, because more people are sitting around it. The others have noticed. Someone repeats the practice. Another person imitates it. Soon, the group begins to associate the plant with a particular place, purpose, person, or emotional state. But humans have always been experts at one thing: copying success. Long before we understood science, we understood imitation. If the strongest hunter eats a certain berry, others eat it. If the best tracker sharpens his spear a certain way, others do the same. If one man keeps returning from the wilderness alive, people pay attention. Soon, they're all feeding the same strange plants into the fire, one by one. Curiosity spreads faster than explanation ever could. The smoke rises. Hands pass the burning bundle from one person to the next. No one says much. They don't have to. Something is happening that language isn't equipped to describe. Because smoke doesn't only affect individuals. Shared rituals can also change what a group believes the experience means. Imagine sitting around a fire after a brutal day. The hunt failed. Food is scarce. Everyone is exhausted. Arguments should be inevitable. Instead, conversation slows. Faces soften. Someone laughs. Then another. The tension that followed everyone back from the hunt begins to dissolve. Not completely, just enough. The smoke may not create trust by itself, but repeating the same action in the same place with the same people can turn an individual sensation into a shared social experience. Think about every ritual humans still practice today. Eating together, singing together, drinking together, gathering around a fire. The activity matters, but so does the shared experience. Doing the same thing, at the same time, feeling something together. That's how strangers become allies, and allies survive longer than loners ever do. Then something even stranger happens. Among the tribe is an elder, the one everyone listens to, the healer, the storyteller, the person who remembers what everyone else forgets. He breathes in more smoke than anyone, far more. His eyes lose focus. His body begins to sway. Words pour from his mouth, disconnected, rhythmic, almost dreamlike. To us, it may look like intoxication. To the tribe, it means something entirely different. They believe he has gone somewhere, somewhere ordinary people cannot reach, a place where ancestors still speak, where spirits answer questions, where illness begins, and where healing comes from. Whether those beliefs were true isn't really the point. What matters is that the experience felt real, and experiences that feel real shape cultures. Long before Europeans encountered tobacco, indigenous peoples across the Americas had already developed many distinct uses for it. In some communities, it was used medicinally. In others, it was offered in ceremony, prayer, diplomacy, healing, or communication with the spiritual world. The methods, meanings, and plants differed greatly from one society to another. These traditions should not be flattened into a single universal smoking culture, and they were not the same thing as modern commercial cigarette use. The plant is no longer just a plant. It becomes a symbol, a bridge, a ritual, a promise. Somehow, a natural insecticide has become a sacred object. Not because the plant changed, because we did. Look at what just happened. First, it produced a powerful physical effect. Then humans gave that effect a purpose. Medicine, ceremony, identity, diplomacy, habit. The role keeps expanding. Few plants have climbed so many ladders inside human civilization. What began as chemistry slowly became culture. And once culture adopts something, evolution no longer works alone. Ideas begin evolving too. Which leaves us with a question that's difficult to ignore. Who was really shaping whom? Let's go back to the question we started with. Why did humans fall in love with tobacco? Now try asking it another way. What if humans didn't choose tobacco? What if tobacco chose us? At first, that sounds absurd. Plants don't make decisions. They don't chase prey. They don't build traps. They don't have intentions. So how could a plant possibly choose anything? It didn't. Not consciously. Evolution doesn't need intention, only results. Imagine you're a tobacco plant. You're rooted to the ground for your entire life. No legs, no wings, no way to escape. Every insect is a threat. Every hungry animal could be the end of your genetic line. Your only defense is chemistry. So, over millions of years, you refine your weapons. A molecule here, a mutation there. Anything that makes herbivores think twice before taking another bite. That's all evolution asks of you. Survive long enough to reproduce. Nothing more, nothing less. But every once in a while, evolution stumbles onto something extraordinary. A molecule that doesn't just repel an enemy, it influences another species. A species unlike anything the plant has ever encountered. One with hands, with fire, with memory, with stories. A species capable of carrying seeds farther than the wind ever could. The molecule never intended to reward humans. It simply happened to fit an ancient piece of human biology. A coincidence. And that coincidence changed the plant's future. The people who discovered the plant kept returning to it. Then they carried it, protected it, cultivated it, crossed mountains with it, crossed oceans with it. Eventually, they crossed entire continents. The plant never learned to walk. Humans became its legs. It never learned to migrate. Humans became its migration. It never built ships. Humans built them instead. No wings, no feet, no intelligence. And yet, it conquered the world. Not by moving, by persuading something else to move for it. This isn't unique to tobacco. Nature is filled with similar bargains. Flowers don't manufacture beautiful colors for our enjoyment. They advertise to insects. Bright fruit isn't trying to please mammals. It's recruiting transportation. Eat me, carry my seeds, spread my offspring. Life has always been negotiating with life. Every species is constantly shaping another. Predators reshape prey. Prey reshape predators. Parasites reshape immune systems. Plants reshape animals. Animals reshape plants. Evolution is never a one-way street. It's a conversation, one that has been going on for billions of years. Humans often imagine ourselves standing outside that process, as though we're the engineers, the designers, the species doing all the shaping. But that's only half the story. Every species that changes the world is also being changed by it. From wild tobacco growing in the Americas to cultivated fields spreading across the world, the plant's success became tied to human desire. Humans shaped tobacco through cultivation. Tobacco shaped human behavior through chemistry. It was not a conscious partnership, and it was not necessarily beneficial to both sides, but it was remarkably effective at reproducing itself. Until the world changed. Then, over the past several centuries, humans transformed the relationship again. Tobacco moved from limited, culturally specific use into a global commercial system. Industrial production made cigarettes cheap, portable, standardized, and available almost everywhere. Instead of using tobacco only during particular ceremonies or occasions, a person could now inhale a rapidly delivered dose again and again throughout the day. Advertising attached cigarettes to status, independence, masculinity, femininity, relaxation, rebellion, and belonging. The plant had not changed its basic chemistry, but humans had engineered a far more efficient way to consume it. So the next time you see a ribbon of smoke rise into the air, pause for a moment. You're not just looking at combustion, you're looking at history. Behind that drifting cloud is a relationship that began long before factories, advertising, or medical warnings. Perhaps it began with medicine, perhaps with ritual, perhaps with curiosity about a plant that made the body feel unmistakably different. We may never know the first reason. Perhaps that's the strangest part of this entire story. The cigarette in your hand may belong to the 21st century, but the receptors responding to it are far older than tobacco itself. Long before cities, long before history, long before anyone knew what nicotine was. And maybe that's the lesson hidden inside this ancient partnership. Evolution doesn't care what is healthy in the modern world, only what produces an immediate and repeatable result. Humans discovered a weapon made by a plant. Then culture gave it meaning. Industry made it constant. And addiction made it difficult to leave behind. The smoke disappears. The story doesn't.